Good morning, Wrestling Inc. It is me, the managing editor, Nick Hausman, back here for another episode of the WINCLY, and joined, as always, as I am, Thursdays at noon Eastern here on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel for the news discussion portion of the show. It's Justin LaBar. Justin, welcome back to the WINCLY.
Good day, Mr. Hausman. Good day.
Good day to you, Justin. What a wacky, wild time in the world of professional wrestling here. The past 4 days, I've been out on the road covering a lot of the bigger events in the world of professional wrestling. Impact Homecoming, All Ins, or not All In, AEW's Rally, and of course SmackDown Live. But Justin, what have you been up to here the past couple days? Catch me up. What's going on in the world of Justin LaBar with professional wrestling right now? I know you've got some suites available for the Rumble and things.
Suites for the Rumble. Pretty soon we will release the announcement of we have a suite package for the entire Mania weekend through my wonderful friends and sponsors at TicketKingOnline.com. So it'll be not only can you sit in a suite at Royal Rumble, but then WrestleMania week you can sit in a suite for Hall of Fame, for NXT, for Mania, for Raw. We're talking dead center to the ring, catered food, drink, private bathroom, your own entrance to get in and out of the venue, no lines. Hang out with me. It's a great time. So that the Mania suites will be released here shortly in the next couple weeks. So yeah, I'm sitting back getting ready for these big events, and then of course watching as the rest of the world Jacksonville, which was the center of the wrestling universe for Tuesday.
Yeah, let's just start there. Yeah, so I was at the AEW rally as media, and first of all, the AEW rally was very media friendly. When I showed up, and I showed up a little over an hour before the rally even started, there was already a couple hundred fans in line, and I wondered how chaotic this thing was going to be. They let me in early to take photos. They had a media section for everybody, and it was cool because I got to be in the rally when it was like empty, and I could see the stage, and there were kind of, I could confirm little tidbits about maybe who was there and take some photos and stuff. But what was really cool was just getting to be in the inside of it and watch that line grow, because it felt like 1,000 fans that formed a line before this thing even got in. Did it play as big as it felt being there as it did on the live stream, Justin?
Well, the biggest problem, and I didn't want to be the guy, I didn't want to be that guy who's nitpicking or be that guy who, he's kissing WWE's ass. Of course he's going to hate on AEW, because everything I've said is about AEW has been positive. I thought most everything came off really well. The one problem I had from a viewer standpoint, they were feeding the music into the production. So if you go back and watch the live streams, rather than hearing the music ambiently play there on the PA system there, they fed it in. So they fed like an audio, they fed Jericho's music in. So therefore you're hearing this fed music, you couldn't hear the crowd. So there were many times where I see pyro going off, I see Chris Jericho, I assume people are going nuts, I kind of see people going nuts, but I couldn't hear it. So that was the only real nitpick I had about the production and how they did things. And at first I was watching the stream on Twitter, and I thought, well, I don't know their sources of how they're doing this. Let me go to a different platform. Maybe the audio is different. Yeah, not knowing. I do a lot of live streaming in my life that sometimes you're using different, equipment and such. So I went over to, I think, YouTube. Same thing. I was like, okay, it's universal. That's the only nitpick. So if you're asking about the crowd, a little hard for me to tell. Pictures looked like it was well attended. Couldn't tell as well as sound because of some of the, production things they were doing. But that's really the only nitpick I can give at it. Everything else came off like, okay, this is a real big legitimate deal. I like how they booked it, kind of like a wrestling show. Kind of had like a little swerve at the end for the main event surprise. It was cool. I thought it was well done, and to the point of, it seemed like they were being media friendly to you guys. I saw yours and some other people's photos from the media hours in advance, and I thought to myself, and then I saw the the scrums that they did afterwards. I said, this is good, because right now, WWE's gotten better over the last couple of years of how they deal with the media and the line of communication, but there's always been a little bit of a critique about WWE likes the media when they need to like the media,
right?
The wrestling media. So I thought it was very good that AEW set a nice tone of, hey, we're gonna be as accommodating as we realistically can be.
Yeah, it was. I was one of the 7 that stayed all the way to the very end, and we will have audio here, some snippets from some of the questions I got to ask Hangman Page, Cody, the Bucks. I got 2 minutes with Tony Khan. All that audio is going to be sprinkled here throughout the show. And I should also mention, you can only hear that audio, of course, if you're listening to the WINCLY over on the Wrestling Inc. audio channel. So go subscribe. Also on the show here today, You're finally going to get the PCO interview that we've been teasing here for weeks, Justin. It's happening. The PCO interview will be on. Of course, him and Villain Enterprises will take on Silas Young and the Briscoes. This, I believe this weekend on Reign Supreme. You go to ROHWrestling.com to find out more about that. And we will also have a portion or maybe the entirety. I'll see how it goes right after this. Right after this WINCLY live recording here, I'm going to be jumping on to a live press scrum with Women of Wrestling's owner, Jeannie Buss, founder, producer, Dave McLean from Glow, and Andrew Simon, the Fight TV CEO. So a lot of questions that are going to be asked on that. New Japan, AEW. Are you talking to Tony Khan? Jeannie Buss is also the owner of an NBA franchise. So we'll have all that audio in here as well. But back to AEW. So here are some of the notes. And by the way, Justin, it was really cool hearing you talk about what the live feed was like, because that was a completely different experience about what I felt on the inside, because there was real energy there. You know, and I was at All In Chicago, where there was 10,000 of the hardest of hardcore fans that just love these guys. And that energy rolled right over to the rally. I don't know. I don't want to say it was an underwhelming number of fans, because there were a lot of fans. It was just that they had a portion of the parking lot kind of filled up. I would have loved it if they kind of maybe opened it up and made it more of a C and whatever, but that's a little thing. It was very cool. And then, yeah, in the media area, I was right up front. I jumped up on a chair, and we have some live footage of me interacting with the fans over on our Facebook and Twitter. Great experience. But here's the notes coming out of the show. 2 shows announced. Double or Nothing is going to be in Vegas. They're going to do another show in Jacksonville. A large portion of the gate from the Double or Nothing show in Vegas will be donated to the victims of gun violence. Cool on them, especially with last year's Vegas shooting. Nice on them to do that, especially right out of the gate. Here's who signed following the rally: Cody, Brandy, the Bucks, Hangman Page, SCU, Britt Baker, Dr. Britt Baker, now confirmed. Pac, aka Neville, showed up to confront Hangman Page. We'll get to that here in a bit. Joey Janela was there. He laid out MJF, who was also there. He brought along with him Penelope Ford. They also announced that they'll be working with OWE, which is an outfit from China that does, like, as they described it, Cirque du Soleil meets cruiserweight action. I've seen a little bit of it on YouTube. Very interesting style. I think you should go check that out. And, of course, the biggest get was Chris Jericho. Now, Wrestling Observer reporting Kenny Omega is expected to sign with AEW at the end of the month when the contract expires with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Of course, he's already announced he's leaving that. Jericho's been moved to the alumni section and removed from the Raw opener. I'm going to get right to this, Justin, and then we can chat about it. But I actually had a chance to chat with Hangman Page about Pac confronting him on stage and teasing a possible match, maybe for the Dragon's Gate title, maybe for the first ever AEW championship. We don't really know why, but there was a confrontation. So right now we're going to play some audio for you guys listening to the podcast feed on iTunes. It's of Hangman Page responding to Pac. And also of note, Billy Gunn is going to serve as a backstage agent, and Joey Janela has been allowed to do spring break, or will be allowed to do spring break, and Jericho is going to be allowed to do his cruise. A lot to digest there, Justin. And we've actually, that's all of the notes coming out of it, to the best of my knowledge. A lot to digest. What were the biggest points for you coming out of the rally?
Well, I think obviously Chris Jericho, number one. Not that he was a complete out of left field surprise, but, the fact that he is, signing with some kind of long-term, some kind of commitment deal where, this is the first time he's going to be committed to another pro wrestling company in the United States that's not WWE since 1999. So that's a big deal. Jericho, obviously, I thought it was interesting, the comments that were made by Brandy, by the chief branding officer, as she talked about, the pay scale with women, and they're trying to bring equality there. I think when you start getting into things like that about the pay, and I know we'll talk about possibility of health insurance for talent who also maybe serve office employee kind of status. I think that's the kind of stuff that really, it's one thing if you have a compelling product, but when you really can start to change the requirements and expectations of how pro wrestlers are going to be treated in the U.S., and that's then going to force WWE to have to react. That's huge. There's never going to be a union in pro wrestling. That'll never happen. But if they can start to regulate even more and compete with benefits and taking care of their other guys and girls. That might be the biggest news of it all long term.
Yeah, and you know what? I was going to wait to play this portion of the audio later in the show, but I feel like this is a good transition. If you are listening at home for the podcast version right now, I'm going to play you my 2-minute interview I did with Tony Khan, where I asked him on the spot about possible negotiation with AEW and Kenny Omega, and about whether wrestlers will be getting health insurance in AEW. So if you're a podcast listener, you're going to hear that right now. Now, here's what was interesting about what Tony said. Now, Tony kind of beat around the bush there, did eventually say it looks like there will be some kind of healthcare compensation package. But throughout the event, you know, he got asked about it. Cody was asked about it. I feel like a couple of the talent were asked about it in different iterations. And the needle kind of, the goalpost kind of kept moving a little bit. You know, it sounds like if you're an executive, if you're front office, you're an employee, you'll be getting some kind of health benefit package. If you're not that, as Cody mentioned in the post-show scrum, if you get injured in the ring, they're going to take care of you. They'll take care of full rehab. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Justin. That's like the same model that WWE already has in place, correct?
For the most part. I don't know what's written in black and white, but from talent I've talked to who've been injured, it seems it's become pretty regular that, yeah, if you've been hurt in the ring, WWE is going to do their best to take care of your surgery or whatever you need, and then the rehab that follows.
Yeah, and so it to me didn't sound too different than the model that WWE has. Now, in the same token, you know, Cody was quick to point out we're going to pay the guys well. We want to make sure they're taken care of. That's a big thing we want to be doing differently here at AEW. Brandy at the rally also noted that they're going to put a strong emphasis on the women's division. The women are going to be paid the same as men. She was pressed about that a little bit on Twitter about what exactly that means. And she said that if you're an entry-level woman wrestler, you would be getting the same entry-level pay as a male wrestler, which is still a little, I guess, fluctuous. I guess there's some gray area how to define that. But what do you think, Justin? Is that a step in the right direction? Is that the right way to be pushing this right now?
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, you look at even just stepping outside of pro wrestling here, you know, obviously with just the Me Too movement and just, you know, there's just been such an emphasis coming to light about, you know, equal treatment for women, and that can mean pay, that can mean respect, you know, a whole litany of things. I'm not going to go all down that wormhole, but yeah, I think it was worth her mentioning. I thought it was good that she mentioned it. You know, there's no bad PR that comes from that. So if they truly are intending to stick to that promise of equality, then absolutely, I thought it was wise for her to mention it.
So a couple more notes here coming out of the rally. Man, I looked at my run sheet a little bit different. We got even more coming out of this AEW rally. Like I said, I did manage to get in on site before all the fans were let in and everything. And I got a couple bits of insight about the relationship with Pro Wrestling Tees. It does sound like Pro Wrestling Tees is going to be serving as the exclusive merchandiser for AEW, at least for the time being, which is a big get for Pro Wrestling Tees. One of the big reasons I'm told they're going to continue to work with Pro Wrestling Tees. Pro Wrestling Tees has obviously found a way to not just sell online. You can tell they have a wholesale distribution or retail distribution model in place as well. They know how to work with companies like Hot Topic. So it's not like you're just partnering with an online retailer. The relationships that Pro Wrestling Tees has in the retail space, obviously very appealing. So right now, Pro Wrestling Tees is the exclusive merchandiser for AEW, to the point Ryan Barkin, the owner of Pro Wrestling Tees, this is awesome. So Tony Khan picks up the Bucks in Tokyo, right? And he calls up Ryan and he's like, "Hey, Ryan, my private jet is going to be stopping in Chicago on the way to Jacksonville. Do you need a ride?" And so Ryan Barkin got to fly with the Bucks and Tony Khan in the private jet all the way to Jacksonville. I mean, the Pro Wrestling Tees relationship, I can just confirm, is very, very strong. After that, let's see here. There were, of course, the report or the video that came out as well of security at the WWE SmackDown event booting, I guess, some fans for wearing AEW merchandise. This was a weird story to track, Justin, because there were like people that said I got turned away, but then later they were like, "Oh, it's cool." They like let them in. I heard stuff about how they weren't offered shirts. I asked around and talking to somebody close to the actual SmackDown event, I was told it didn't sound like that was an actual directive given to security, because there were not AEW logos posted to all the security outlets, right? Like there wasn't something visible for the security people to check. I don't know. What did you hear about this story and fans getting turned away, and what did you think of it, Justin?
Well, when I heard about it, I was like, this kind of almost sounds like, they're of course these fans are coming from the rally. They're all charged up. Revolution, changes here. Maybe a little bit of anti-WWE, even though they're giving WWE their money, going to SmackDown. So it kind of sounded like a story that I could see some fans drumming up or taking something of it and exaggerating it just to perpetuate the revolutionary tones that were in the air that day. I don't know. I mean, I know WWE has been asked before, have asked fans before to turn things inside out, or have given fans shirts to to cover up something. I mean, so I know that's part of WWE's practice. They do that, especially if you're going to be in plain visible sight of the cameras, if you're sitting in that section. But to think that Vince and WWE would be, I don't want to use, I guess, dumb enough to like, well, I don't know. It seemed a little bit too drummed up to me. I don't know.
Well, here's what was weird, Justin. So I actually was at SmackDown as well, right? I went from the AEW rally and boot scoot and boogied over to SmackDown as quick as I could. And it was a very different environment. I mean, once I was in SmackDown, I didn't see a whole lot of AEW stuff. The fans were very invested in what they were watching in the ring. I mean, you had that women's triple threat, Bar Usos. I mean, there was a lot there to kind of sink your teeth into, especially that very interactive Daniel Bryan segment to start the show off. So it to me, it didn't feel like the crowd was going to try to AEW take over the show, and it didn't feel like they were also put off that they were being repressed or anything like that. I mean, I just did. I was expecting kind of a hostile environment. I didn't get it, Justin. It was weird.
Well, I think it was your video, that I saw when you asked Cody and Brandy about the reports as fans were entering, and I thought it was interesting Cody's remarks somewhere in the answer. I apologize if I'm screwing around on here.
I hate to cut you off. I hate to cut you off. I'll play it right now so they can hear it on the podcast stream, and I'll let you keep going here in just a second. So right now, if you're listening, here are the comments that Justin is referring to. All right, Justin, I'll let you go back to where you were going. Sorry.
Yeah, so I found it interesting that Cody's saying there about how Jacksonville's not a traditionally hot market for WWE. So I thought that was just to think about that and absorb that in many different ways and apply it to the conversation we're having here about, what kind of crowd were you expecting? And, it sounds like Jacksonville is the kind of town that, they just show up to wrestling if they want to show up, and then they're not real. I mean, I don't know. Those comments just really stuck out to me that he kind of identified Jacksonville the way he did. Just noting that would not be wise at WWE to do anything to compromise the existing audience they already have here, or whoever they have here.
Yeah, man, Cody and Brandy were smooth assassins on that question, and it was fun and also a little weird to ask it because, as you heard me in the tape say, they were signing autographs while that story was breaking. So I was literally probably the first person to tell them about it. And to their credit, also as another note from the AEW rally, they signed. Everyone there, except Jericho, was in a signing line. They signed posters for every single fan that came out to the rally. They were only going to do like 100 or so, and they wound up waiting till later to make sure every fan left with something signed. So good on them. It was interesting, and we'll follow that story. It's going to be a weird time. I'd be interested to see if AEW does more pre-WWE show stuff. We'll see. Two more notes here coming out of the AEW rally. Wrestling Observer did report that there are currently WWE talents interested in jumping to AEW. It's wait and see. Obviously, they're still under contract. But last week we chatted about, I tried to put you on the spot, who are some names that you could see possibly jumping. There was some teases this week from guys that were kind of playing with the fans, who knows, from WWE. But Ty Dillinger is a name that jumped out to me as a guy who was kind of messing around. Zack Ryder's been doing a lot of it too. Those are guys that I could see, they had almost pin Ray on SmackDown last night. They're getting behind Mustafa Ali. They're reheating Finn Balor back up. The club's getting a little bit more time. But those guys seem to still be falling between the cracks. And I could see them being valuable additions to AEW, if that's where they decided they wanted to go,
Yeah, AEW coming into play here again. And I said this on my podcast, and I'll say it here. And then I encourage people to go to my podcast and hear the full length explanation. But, again, not until we know the distribution can we truly definitively say AEW is going to be the most legitimate competition to WWE. But it seems like that's going to be the case, and that changes the leverage. That changes the status quo because before, if you're in WWE, you're going to mind yourself to an extent because if they decide to boot you, all right, so there's Impact or Ring of Honor. I mean, there's options, but where are the shortcomings going to be? Is it money? Is it whatever the case may be? But if AEW is going to truly have the pay comparable to WWE, the health comparable to WWE, the merchandising and getting money off of your merch comparable, maybe a better travel schedule, maybe a better TV schedule. It's not as brutal. All of a sudden, if you're a Zack Ryder or Ty Dillinger, you're kind of going, well, hell, what do I have to lose here? I speak my mind. Either Vince starts to use me, or I got an option over here.
Yeah, will be a very exciting year. And I think they have. I think I counted maybe like 12 or 13 talents they've announced, and if you throw in OWE, which sounds like it's going to be a bit of their cruiserweight division, they've got about 20 guys, a couple girls in the mix now. There's certainly room to flush out that roster. Lastly, here coming out of the AEW rally, well, two things. First of all, Billy Gunn will be served. I think I may have mentioned this. I don't know. Billy Gunn will be served as a backstage agent, but also okay, I knew you wanted to comment on this. I got another.
No, it's great. That's great that's great. Billy Gunn, to have him there contributing to stories, contributing to matches, that's huge. He's a good guy. He's a good mind. I don't know too many people that don't respect him. So I mean, that's.
Dude, I'm 1,000% with you. It was funny. I used to do shows before the Outlaws did their WWE return. They were doing the indies and stuff when they were, still physically fairly in their prime. And I remember talking with Road Dogg when I was managing some guys against their tag team, and we're putting together, the match and everything. And he's like, the nice thing about our act, me and Billy, is I just do all the talking because he's the one who actually knows how to wrestle and put together entertaining wrestling matches. And I never forgot that. Of course, Road Dogg has moved into an agent position, but Billy Gunn, you're right, man. He's about as sharp as anybody. In
the summer of 2011, I followed those guys around and produced, and it was on digital for a while, and there's some hard copies, a documentary about them, and that was fascinating to be around them. And they were clean at this point. They were celebrating a year or two of sobriety and had their head on straight. They were really focused again to just kind of get back to doing what they love. Did a pre-show or did a post-show in Chicago, in fact, with Billy Gunn for another outlet. I mean, I've got to spend a lot of time around those guys, and they're two great minds, and they're just two legitimately good guys, just good guys. So like, I'm happy to see, Billy obviously had a run working on the PC, working with WWE and NXT, not there anymore. I'm happy that AEW is scooping him up.
Can I tell you a funny Billy Gunn backstage story while we're talking Billy Gunn? So me and my buddy Ruff Crossing, shout out to Ruff if any of you are familiar with him here in the Midwest. But Ruff and I, really good friends backstage, we created this game called Do We Have Heat? And the way it worked was you would walk up to the most famous wrestler in the locker room that you didn't know and ask them, do we have heat? And see how they reacted since they had no idea who you were. I played this only a few times because it got some very interesting reactions. But my favorite was so I did not know Billy Gunn really that well. And I go, Ruff, I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask it to Billy. So I walked over to Billy and I go, excuse me, Billy. And he's like tying up his boots, getting ready to like go out. I go, Billy, do we have heat? And he looks at me just confused as all hell, right? And he looks over my shoulder, and I think my buddy Rick Ruff is just losing it, just cracking up. And then he looks at me and he goes, man, if I had heat with you, I'd beat you so hard with my right hand till I couldn't use it no more. Then I'd start beating you with my left hand till I couldn't. And when both my hands were done beat, I'd start beating you with my right foot. Then I'd start beating you with the left. And it was really funny, and I couldn't keep it together. And we both just like burst out laughing. But it was that moment there. We got heat. That's just so confusing. But he had the best response of anybody. Anyway,
I like the Southern twang you really emphasized on his voice there.
Well, I mean, in my head, that's how I remember it. That's how his voice was. I remember he planted the words very directly. So Anyway, last announcement here coming out of the All Elite Wrestling Rally. Starcast 2 has been formally announced. They're going to be teaming with Conrad Thompson again. Very exciting. I've got to chat a little bit with Conrad after the event. And, knock on wood, Raj, if you're listening, it sounds like we'll be on site to cover that in the next the Double or Nothing with AEW as well. So very exciting. Starcast 2 was a huge success. I was fortunate to be a little part of it. And, good on them. I hope Conrad doesn't lose his mind. I know he almost had like a mental breakdown putting the last one together. So.
He's a busy guy. I hosted one of the Something to Wrestle With events here in Pittsburgh back in the summer with him and Bruce. And, Conrad just, we're all busy. We all hustle. But that man, there's not enough hours in the day for him.
Yeah, man, catch the wave, ride the ride. Good for him. It was funny because I walked in and I saw him and I was like, what's Conrad doing? And they're like, he's hosting with Alex Marvez from Sirius. And, something I didn't get to bring up, there's so many questions, I wanted to ask, and, maybe I'll get Tony or, whoever, Cody, for an interview here. But the commentary team, right? Who are going to be the commentators for AEW? Alex Marvez, Conrad Thompson, interesting team. I don't know how Conrad would do on commentary, but two interesting personalities there. I also know that Chris Harrington, for you guys that know Chris from Twitter and elsewhere, Chris Harrington is a part of AEW. He was in a very nice suit walking around. I couldn't get from him exactly what his position was, but Cody said he's the guy that understands the money. And I remember Chris saying to me, I'll be handling spreadsheets. So I guess we'll find out what more Chris's position is backstage. Lastly here, we can't jump completely off AEW. Since Billy's going to be a part of AEW as a producer, Sean Waltman interviewed Tony Khan yesterday. Did you see that?
Yes. I didn't see the interview, but I saw that Pac had, or X-Pac had Tony on. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, if they're going to pick up Billy as a producer or as an agent, I mean, Sean's a more than capable mind as well. I don't really know where he falls into the kind of like Billy. It's like, I don't really know where he falls in the WWE landscape right now, but he's another mind I think would be great in the mix. Hell, under the right circumstances, maybe even wrestle. I think
it would just depend on the schedule. I know you I think you talk to Sean more than I do these days, but he seems like he's kind of this is just my guess. If I'm wrong, or Sean, if you listen, if I'm wrong, he seems like he's kind of like he's kind of a comfortable homebody. He kind of likes to be. That's what, again, I don't know. I don't know what he want to do. I don't know what kind of travel AEW's gonna have. I don't know if he'd want to do any kind of road commitment. I don't know. I'm just guessing here.
It's a great segue though, because they only have 2 shows announced here for a 9-month period. These guys, it's not like they've announced a tour schedule or TV tapings or anything. And again, Cody was quick to point out we didn't fire off every shot here. We had to keep a couple things in our back pocket to keep people guessing. But Joey Janela, he's going to still be working with GCW, right? He's doing Joey Janela's spring break, I guess, WrestleMania weekend. Chris Jericho's going to be able to do his cruise. From what I gather, largely these guys are going to be allowed to keep their independent bookings while under AEW contracts, at least for the time being. I don't know if you've kind of heard the same or not.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm kind of curious how that's going to go, because that goes back to this. That goes back to the. Look, that goes back to the whole thing about getting hurt in the ring. I mean, it's one thing to be friendly and let Jericho still do a cruise, let Joey still do his spring break, but at some point you have to draw a line of exclusivity. One, just to make your brand feel as powerful as it needs to be, which is the only place you can really see these guys predominantly is here. But also, you don't want them going out and getting hurt elsewhere, and all of a sudden now you don't have them. And if they get hurt elsewhere, are you paying for that? There has to be some outline of exclusivity within reason. I mean, that's so we'll see. I mean, but I would imagine, I would guess, just if they have TV, it wouldn't start till the fall, I would think. I don't know, just me.
Yeah, no, and I've seen you tweet about it. TNT, TBS, they've moved more in a sports direction again these days. Obviously, they have a history of success with pro wrestling. I don't know if they'd go back to that well or not, but Tuesday Night Dynamite, that's the trademark that the Cons have for All Elite Wrestling. That's the TV show. Sounds like a great name for All Elite Wrestling. And also at the same time, this was like a weird, this is weird how another thing on the back end, we used to do 120 Sports, remember? It's turned into Stadium, which is an outlet here in Chicago. They do great work, by the way. Please bring Justin and I back if you'd like. But the Bleacher Report Live, which is very similar to what Summit does. Bleacher Report Live is the basically the app version of TNT and TBS Sports, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they have been working to get licensed for a lot of very specific sports outlets. Weirdly, one of them was that I worked for was the World Arm Wrestling League. Like, they want to have a hand in all of these niches. So World Arm Wrestling League is available on the Bleacher Report app alongside NBA and all that. If they were looking to partner with a pro wrestling outfit to fill that void in the Bleacher Report live section and maybe even give them TV time on a TNT, it doesn't make, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't see a reason they wouldn't go for it,
That would be interesting. I worked for Bleacher Report for several years and had a really good experience there. And one of the things that kind of started at the beginning and the end for me, I left, within, I guess, probably 6 months after they were acquired by Turner, left of my own choice, because I started, from my vantage point, started sensing that, like, all right, they like the page views and clicks that WWE provided them, Bleacher Report that is, but they didn't seem real interested. Turner didn't seem at the time interested in having it in their plan of like investing more in us and in that section of the site. So I ended up moving on. So that's interesting. If now, when that was, I don't know, 5 years ago, probably, it'd be interesting now if they've spun around and are going to get involved in that. But that'd be something. It's so funny. I remember you doing the arm wrestling class. I haven't thought about that until you just said that. It's a blast from the past.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm still friendly with the World Arm Wrestling guys. Who knows? 2019's new adventures. I'm a big fan of the arm wrestling. It's over the top. But they could, they could very easily pick up a pro wrestling product. I know they're interested in picking up these franchises and things like that. Last thing here coming out of the AEW stuff. New Japan ROH. I have heard rumblings that following the Madison Square Garden show, we could see a shift in the landscape here with New Japan's relationship. I don't want to speculate too hard because I haven't heard. Literally, I've heard from multiple people. I was on site. I was talking to a lot of people. You hear a lot of things. Some of the stuff here on the show I've said with confidence. This was one of those things I'm saying, like, it's day to day. This is still a work in progress. We're still kind of making decisions here on the fly, but there could be a shift here for New Japan to a relationship with AEW, or maybe AEW doesn't partner with either. Maybe New Japan ROH roll through 2019. Rumblings in your ear. What are you hearing? How do you feel about what the relationship is like for these three companies in 2019?
To me, I think it's inevitable they're going to work together in some capacity. I think a partnership is kind of inevitable, and it would behoove all three of them not to try to play nice and offer in some resources to each other.
Yeah, we'll see. It's like the cons have so much money, and the promotions they're working, OWE, GCW, Dragon's Gate, no offense, all great promotions, but smaller promotions they're letting their guys kind of fill in the blanks with. Are they going to be willing to partner with another promotion like that? It does. I know everyone's saying, oh, you got to play together and that's the way to get attention and everything. But, they've proven that they're a draw in and of themselves. If this thing really catches fire and, ticket sales are flying, merchandise is flying, talent's banging down their door to be a part of it. I don't know.
Well, if it gets to that point, I mean, right now, obviously All In was a huge success, but right now they haven't done any of that, so I think it's wise for them off the ground floor here to play nice with everybody. Don't come in here and be the new kid on the block who's not going to play with anybody and wants to be a douche, essentially. Right. But if we're talking a year or 2 years down the road, they're just untouchable with what they're doing business wise. Well, yeah, then status quo changes, leverage changes. They now have the ability to be a little bit more in the driver's seat of things, and maybe you'll pull back on how much partnership they want to do. But I think off the ground floor, I think it would be wise.
All right. Well, I'm betwixt on it, and I don't know enough about. I'll ask Chris Harrington. What do those spreadsheets look like? You tell me. I'm just betwixt on it. I could see it going either way. All right, we got less than half an hour here to get through the rest of the news. Actually, less than 20 if we can. I got to jump over to this Women of Wrestling call, which will be included here on the show for you listening on iTunes. Raw and SmackDown notes. There was the Mean Gene Memorial segment on Raw, of course, with Hulk Hogan. Universally, it seemed to have been very well embraced. I mean, say what you will about the circumstances, people really seem to have enjoyed this. It was the right circumstances, I think, here for Hulk. It wasn't too long. It was kind of brief on Hulk's part. The very wonderful video package that was played going into it. I mean, again, Hulk is a personality on its own. I was kind of watching different folks in the crowd for how they react. But it does seem to have, been universally brought back. I don't know how Hulk would be received a second time in WWE, not under these circumstances. But Justin, how did you think the Hulk Mean Gene Memorial segment came across?
I thought it was one of obviously it's sad losing Gene, but I thought it was one of the best segments of the night.
Agreed.
It was well done. Yeah, I thought short and sweet, or as short as Hulk is going to be. Yeah, I thought it was good. I liked him wearing the throwback shirt of the Genomania. That was cool.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't want to get into like the demerits of whatever bringing Hulk back under these circumstances, because I know Gene would have liked it. People seem to have liked it. So when Hulk's back under different circumstances in WWE, I think that will be a very different conversation. I think this is kind of, if anything, maybe a little bit of a bubble moment. There was also the awkward Brock and Braun segment that took place that was universally panned. Justin, I see you shaking your head here. But it's just like shoveling money into the fire. I feel like, I don't know. It's so bizarre.
That might have been one of the worst segments I've ever seen. I mean, and I've watched a lot, and mind you, I'm a huge fan of the attraction that is Brock Lesnar. I'm a huge Braun Strowman fan. I'm watching this, and I was like, just make it stop. They would have been better off sitting those guys down, doing pre-tapes, putting together the UFC type hype packages they do, where Heyman says some buzzwords. Brock cusses a lot and they beep it out. They would have just been better off doing that to build to this match, because that whole segment just felt like they were completely handcuffed with limitations, whether it be we don't want to give away too much, whether it be Braun's not physically cleared yet, whatever it was a steaming pile of donkey do. It was bad.
Yeah, man, and it's crazy because, over on the SmackDown side of it, Becky Lynch wins that triple threat. You're going to get Becky Asuka, and people are like way into that. And it's crazy to think that 2019 right now, the WWE universe is hotter for Becky Lynch than Brock Lesnar, of all people. And I don't get this. I don't get the attitude from Brock of I don't care. I don't want to be here. It downplays the product. It makes him seem uninterested. I think it allows fans. It gives them an excuse to tune out. I don't get it, man. I don't know what they're going to do here to reheat this thing up going into the Rumble. And they should have never turned Braun heel. I never got why they did that, but time for a first.
Yeah, I mean, they should never turn Braun heel. I mean, hey, do we all remember back when they were teasing that Brock and Heyman were going to split up? I mean, like, there's just a lot of bizarre stuff in the last 6 to 8 months with all those stories there.
Let's jump over here to Impact Wrestling. I was on the road as well. I was at the Impact TV tapings. I was also at Impact Homecoming. I want to thank Impact. They allowed us to cover not just as press, but they opened up the doors to let us cover the VIP event, which had an exclusive interview with Ed Nordholm. We have a lot of written highlights up from Ed's discussion about Pursuit, and kind of back down from the idea that they were going to get too sexually edgy. They didn't want to go back to the Attitude Era. But it was a great experience. And on a personal note, I got to sit front row and watch Homecoming right next to the winner of Survivor, Nick Wilson. And I am a giant Survivor fan. And it was, for me personally, what a wild experience to be in the Asylum in Nashville watching pro wrestling next to somebody that I've been watching on TV with John Morrison, Johnny Impact right there. Very cool. So with that, here's the Impact.
You are the type, though, to go live on an island for contest.
Anything to get off social media for like 40 days would be just great right now.
No, anything for you to grow a beard, that would be ridiculous by the time it's all over.
Oh, sure. And I could hide like that'd be great. I should have the beard, because when I find the immunity idols, that I can like hide them in my beard, right? You don't have to tuck them in my crotch.
I haven't watched Survivor since season 2.
Dude, you got to go back and at least watch the Johnny season. It's wild to just see like John Morrison competing on Survivor and doing it, and like being out in the rain and everything.
Does he like parquet through the island?
No, well, I interviewed him about this, and now we're going off the rails. I got to get back on the rails here in just a second. But I interviewed, and he told me he specifically downplayed his physical strengths and challenges and stuff, so people wouldn't see him as too much of a threat. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting next to not just Nick, but Davey, who was also on the show and made it very close to the finals. And I said that to Davey, and Davey's like, well, he failed. We all knew he was a specimen from the moment we saw him. Anyway, Brian Cage, by the way, very forceful push to Davey. Beer flew everywhere. I got very wet. But I know that I've heard from fans that some of the finishes at Homecoming didn't look great. It's different when you're watching on camera. To the live crowd, that show flowed. That but I also didn't see the table spot with Abyss and Eli Drake where Abyss nearly died. Because that was on the other side of the ring. But live, that show really flowed well for the crowd. Impact has announced they're going to simulcast their show on Pursuit, their new network, and Twitch. Awesome move. Yes, if you have the internet, you've got Impact Wrestling. This, for me, is the grand experiment, right? How successful can a wrestling promotion, a major brand in this country be when their biggest part of their audience is going to be the internet, right?
Yeah, it's wise. I mean, especially because I think a lot of people were kind of scratching their heads with Pursuit. At least I was, where it was on the dial. So yeah, this is good to know. This is certainly the type of testing proof of concept that I'm sure AEW will be watching.
Yeah, other than NXT and all the other stuff on the network, this is the first destination weekly show a major promotion is going to be doing and using it. This is like putting Raw on the WWE network for them. So fascinated to see how this plays out. I can tell you, having been at the tapings, they were very good. A lot of great action at the tapings. But they did have a power outage at one point. They managed to get the power back up. That kind of killed the buzz of the TV taping flow for the live crowd a bit. Once they got back on the trail or back on tracks, it was very good. We did see Scarlett Bordeaux announce she was going to be announced who she's managing in the weeks or next week or whatever on Impact. Scott Steiner was a part of the tapings. There was like a strip tease with Scarlett and Scott Steiner. It was edgy, sexy, not quite Attitude Era, in my opinion. I mentioned earlier, Ed Nordholm did the live conversation with the VIPs. I guess right after that, PW Insider reporting he went backstage, gave a very optimistic speech to the roster, said they're not looking to sell the company, regardless of the reports that were out there. And Scott Steiner apparently was brought in for the Impact tapings to pop the debut on Pursuit. Also, Rich Swann won the X Division title. I have here in my notes to go over the CM Punk Cabana lawsuit update. CM Punk has moved to have the latest lawsuit from Cabana. Cabana's looking to recoup legal fees from, of course, their battle with Dr. Aman, which happened last year. I covered that in depth. I wish I had more time right now to talk about it. Maybe next week I'll dive back into this. I do think this is really fascinating what is happening here between those two. Very sorry to see this happening. We have a full report on an update between these two over on Wrestling Inc. I encourage you to go check that out. It was weird for me, though, Justin, because when I was at SmackDown, I got to be front row towards the end. We kind of slowly moved up a little bit because we were on the floor. And I was at one point sitting directly behind Dr. Aman, who I covered in court, like losing to Punk and Cabana. And I almost wanted to be like, hey, remember me? Remember the good days when we were in court together? I just felt weird. I didn't think that was right to do.
We could go down this when we have more time, but
yeah,
obviously that whole dynamic of Punk and Colt now at odds ends with each other. That play is interesting. Everybody. Colt's a guy who's such a draw. Pro wrestling has such a connection with pro wrestling tees. He's such a good draw. You go, oh, well, maybe is there a place for him at AEW? But if you have Colt Cabana at AEW, doesn't that like cut off any chance of getting the golden goose that everybody's asking? Is can you get CM Punk? So that's just a little weird dynamic to think about.
You're correct. I don't know what Cabana's ROH status is either, because he's still the commentator and he may be still under ROH contract for who knows how long, But I thought the same thing, right? If you're AEW, I don't think you can get both. I don't see these guys coexisting in a locker room very harmoniously. But man, I tweeted the other day, without Colt Cabana and the work he did to get pro wrestling tees up and running, to make podcasts and really just viral content from wrestlers profitable, without Colt Cabana, there is no AEW, in my opinion. He paved the way for these guys to do it, and he should, in my opinion, if he wants to be there, have a spot in AEW. And if it was one or the other, I give the ball to Cabana in this situation. Personal call. Anyway, another name up for grabs here. Kushida has announced he's leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling. Huge story. I wish I had time to have Jesse Collins on this week as well. Maybe dive into that. But yeah, man, a staple in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Huge loss. I loved his entrance at Wrestle Kingdom. I know he's going to take on Tanahashi here in his last appearance. But Kushida, NXT, WWE, AEW, what do you think?
I know I've heard NXT for him, but again, I've said in the past, if you're from New Japan, other than AJ Styles, what is it about? What is the real attraction right now of going to
Asuka? She did well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he'll probably go to NXT, but there's a lot I don't know, a lot of bad track record, a lot more bad than there is good.
Well, he's the only one because Kenny, it does sound like is going to go to AEW, and of all the talent, I mean, Naito turned him down. Kushida, I guess, is the one that they made the play for, and it maybe got. So we'll see how that plays out. Wrestling Observer reporting that Piper Niven, who was in the Mae Young Classic, is reportedly signing with WWE soon. And last but not least, for the news of the week, before we throw to interviews, Priscilla Kelly shoved a tampon in another girl's mouth at the December 30th Suburban Fight Pro Wrestling show in LA, and goddamn broke the internet, Justin. Now everybody seems to, it's like I was gonna say a curse word, like it's like a-holes, right? I started it and backtracked. It's like an a-hole. Everyone's got one, an opinion. What is your take on the? I'll give mine, but what's your take on Priscilla Kelly in the tampon spot?
I understand it's an adults only show. I'm always usually the one that's always screaming to people, stop taking things so seriously, stop being a snowflake, stop doing whatever. But I will say, not that I'd ever blacklist her or like I'm never going to take her seriously, but that is one of those stunts where it's like, oh, like we already get ragged on so hard being pro wrestling, and you know it is one of those stunts. There's no way, there's no PR way to spin it around. I'm not gonna blacklist her creativity or damn her creativity of doing it. But yeah, it's one of those stunts that's hard to. You don't want anybody else to walk in the room when it's happening.
I loved it. I really thought it would. I mean, look, here's the thing. I was a Chicago comedian long before I was a pro wrestling personality, and I've done a lot of adults only late night improv comedy shows. I used to get paid for a living to do them for a certain time there, and you know, when you're in that environment, you do raunchy blue comedy stuff. You're allowed to do that. The shackles as a performer are taken off to you. I ask myself, if I was doing an improv scene for an adults only show and we were trying to push the levels, would I play a woman who took a tampon out and tried to shove it into another woman's mouth in like a trailer park fight? I mean, sure, I'd be pantomiming it and doing all that, but yeah, I may have actually seen female improvisers in Chicago do that exact same scene. You are allowed to do that in that environment. You are free to do that in that environment. You are these people who come into that show, they fully know exactly what they are getting into. They are going to a blue show. Now, for a fan to record it and put it out of the public sphere and allow it to be judged right alongside a SpongeBob SquarePants meme, you know, it's obviously in a different context there. But for what it was and where it was done, I have no issue with it. It generated a lot of interest. Maybe it shouldn't have been dropped on social media or maybe it should have had a warning label put at the top of it. You are about to see graphic content. But as for what it was, I have no issue with it. None whatsoever.
I'll give her this. She's more famous than she was last week.
Yeah, and she's carried herself with grace after this. And I think that she's, generated interest. And, again.
I did like her tweet about equality, if you saw that tweet.
Yeah, look, I go to death matches. I'm hosting, by the way, the GCW party bus from Reggie's Rock Club here in Chicago out to Summit, Illinois for GCW's 400 Degrees this Saturday, featuring Nick Gage and Joey Janela. And guess what? I'm going to watch a lot of dudes bleed out of parts that, ain't between their legs, but I'm going to go watch some dudes bleed and fall in glass. And there's, GCW, look, they're working with AEW. There is a market for that. People seem to understand that in this day and age. They don't seem to think that the same does women bleed differently. She worked it into a bit. She tried it out. To some degree it worked. To some degree it didn't. But she was performing in an environment where that's acceptable. It was put out into a public sphere where you can look at it. Look, if you're real tight and you're nervous about menstruation or whatever, yeah, you probably didn't like it, right? It wasn't your cup of tea. But again, the context in which she did it, I thought was totally acceptable. And I thought it was great. I would have done it on an improv stage, 100%.
I want to get Glenn on the show. I want to know what Glenn thought.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. All right.
Because Glenn always stands up for women's rights. I'm curious where he is on the fence with this.
Sure. I have no idea.
I'll tweet him and ask him.
Thanks. Well, while Justin's tweeting here, he's going to come back briefly at the end of the show to wrap it up with me. But right now, let's throw it up to some interviews. I do have a brief clip here with the Young Bucks where I asked them about the future of being the elite. So we'll play that. After that, you're going to hear my interview with PCO. Finally, again, him and Villain Enterprises taking on Silas Young and the Briscoes this weekend at Honor Reigns Supreme. And we are also going to play some, if not all, of the media call from the Women of Wrestling today, featuring the owner, Jeannie Buss, David McLean, the founder of Glow, and the producer for WOW, and Access TV Fight CEO, Andrew Simon. So enjoy that. We'll be back here at the end of the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. That wraps up the WINCLY this week. A lot to get through. We did it, I think, in as about as timely fashion as we could. Again, if you're in Chicago this Saturday, meet me at Reggie's Rock Club. I think we're going to meet there. I'll be there around 5 or 6. Then we're going to hop onto the party bus. It's free to ride. I'll be selling beer on the bus as we roll down the highway and go to GCW's 400 Degrees in Summit, Illinois. And, of course, next week, big news, the WINCLY, no longer just Thursday, noon Eastern. We're going to be going live Tuesday through Thursday right here on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel. I'll have Justin on Wednesday and Thursdays, and I'll have Michael Weissman on Tuesdays. And you can find the full audio with all the interviews, all the extra audio like the stuff I sprinkled in today over on Wrestling Inc. Audio on iTunes. Justin, what do you want to plug, promote, put over here before we wrap up?
At Justin LaBar on social media. And if you want to go to Royal Rumble, there's a few spots left in the too sweet lifestyle. Hit up my friend at Ticket Drew on Twitter, at Ticket Drew, if you want to inquire about how you get set up VIP style at Royal Rumble out in Phoenix.
There you go. And yes, I am at Wink Rebel over on Twitter. Give me a follow. Thanks, everybody, for taking in all the coverage we've been putting out the past couple days. Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you for subscribing over on iTunes. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.